What's up, guys? This is Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. Another cold open for another episode of college football right now. We got a lot of great guests on today. I'm going to be joined in a second by Brandon Haye. We're going to be talking, power rankings from the League Winners top 25 power rankings. We're also going to be recapping week 0 of the college football season for 2025. And after that, we have a lot of great guests. We have Cody Henderson that we saw last week talking Cal football. We have Dan Tortora, former ESPN, former Fox Sports, talking Syracuse, Virginia Tech, South Carolina. We have Shane Barrett talking Auburn. We have Trevor coming in, a new addition to the League Winners family, talking some Wisconsin football. And then we have Mackenzie Neglia, if you guys saw her last week, talking USF football. And of course, I'm Thomas Christopher of the League Winners. I am the owner of the League Winners, and this is a show, College Football Now. Make sure you are liking to the channel, subscribing to the channel, liking the videos. Anytime you see it, scroll by it, like it, share it, do what you got to do to send it out to all platforms on social media. College Football Now will be taking, live accounts from not just myself and some of the other people on my team, but, we'll take beat reporters from multiple different organizations that, that we think are doing a fantastic job. These are feet on the ground reporters, giving their takes from what they're hearing from coaches, players, staff, and more. So like I said, this is College Football Now. It's a recurring show, 2 hours, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, and it's going to be every Tuesday. So make sure, like I said, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, and, sharing wherever you can. And with that, I'm going to bring in my good friend. You can find him at HayB3 on Twitter. This is Brandon Haye. Brandon, how you doing, brother?
I'm good, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. So let's just get to the brass tacks, because I know that you had an interesting opinion about some of the stuff on our power rankings for the top 25 in college football. Is this true? Is this true?
Yes, I did. I think based on our rankings, I think Notre Dame was too high. I don't think they're better than Georgia. They're starting a true freshman quarterback, CJ Carr, the grandson of former Michigan head coach Lloyd Carr. I just don't think that offense is going to be as dynamic. They won't have the runner, Riley Leonard. And I guess a lot of people are higher on Clemson as well. I had them at 6, which I thought was high, but I guess other people had them higher. And I kind of thought that I think after the top 6 or 8 teams, there's a lot of teams clumped together, and you really do your own order there. And one team that I did put on Twitter that they were just outside, the Washington Huskies. I think watch out for them. Their offense should be good. Jed Fish is running a pretty good program there. They have some good players coming back. Denzel Boston is a very good wide receiver on the outside, so watch out for them.
Yeah, and for those who aren't aware, we're going to go through our top 25 rankings from the League Winners. Just remember, these are power rankings right now. They don't align with, nor are they going to align with, the college football AP poll. This is taken from multiple members from within our site. This week's votes are private, but starting next week, we'll also have secondary tables where you can kind of see everybody who's voted, who they voted for, and where they voted. So first place, we have Texas. Texas is ranked at number 1 here. Second is Ohio State, and then we get third as Clemson Tigers. That's the top 3 of our power rankings for 2025. Rounding up the top 5, we have the Penn State Nittany Lions and the Georgia Bulldogs. Going to the top 10 is Notre Dame, Alabama, Oregon, LSU, and South Carolina. So before we go to the next group, Brendan, were there any surprises for you here other than obviously your hatred of Notre Dame and disdain for Clemson?
I think LSU is higher than I had them. Because I think I had South Carolina 9 or something, and you gave me crap about my putting Michigan in top 10, but you see they're 13 on the consensus, so not too far off. I'm very interested to see how they look against New Mexico State. I'm not a great opponent, but Bryce Underwood named the starter. See how the new wide receivers are really doing. One of their top wide receivers is a transfer from Indiana. And I know you love the Hoosiers, so I can't wait to talk till when we get to the Hoosiers in this bowl.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I did put Indiana on here. So this is the top 10. Now we're gonna head down to we're gonna go 11 to 20. We have the Miami Hurricanes. A lot different. Dropping down to 11th place in our power rankings as opposed to the AP poll. We have Florida right behind them at 12. Your Michigan Wolverines at 13. 14 we have the Illinois Fighting Illini. 15 is SMU Mustangs. Glad to see them in the top 15 personally. 16 Iowa State, that win, big win for them over Kansas State week 0. 17 we have the Oklahoma Sooners. Texas A&M is at 18. 19 are those Hoosiers at Indiana, and 20 is Ole Miss. Now going from 11 to 20, any surprises for you there?
No, not really. I think probably like Fort Illinois. I don't remember where exactly I had Illinois, but I think it's they're a little high. But I think 14 through
You had Illinois at 18.
Yeah, so 14 through 19, I think you could like mix those up. I think a lot of those teams are very similar. I think Oklahoma and Texas A&M are going to have very good running game, defense. Don't know about the quarterbacks. Indiana, I don't really know what their defense is going to look like. I actually do like Mendoza from Cal, and I like EJ Surratt on the outside. I just don't. I just don't know. I mean, they beat who they were supposed to last year, and I just don't. I don't know talent wise if they're really there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you for that at all. I mean, I'm personally, I think Michigan's a little high. Bryce Underwood, he's a starting quarterback. I don't know if there's too. I mean, they're going to be good, but are they going to be top 15 good? I think they're closer to 18, but I'll let that one live for now. Indiana, obviously, big fan of them. Fernando Mendoza, I think, is the real deal. And working with Kurt Signetti, I think that's going to be great for him and his brother who's there as well. Love seeing SMU, Rhett Lashley at 15. Big fan of Kevin Jennings, like I said on the show last week, and I think they're going to do good again this week. I think I have them winning the ACC conference, so I think they're going to do good. So let's round out the rest of the group, 21 to 25. We have Kansas, Texas Tech, Georgia Tech, Kansas State, and Baylor. Are there any surprises for you there?
I'm surprised Baylor is in there. I was not overly thrilled with what I saw from Kansas State. I know we're going to talk about that, but there's still. I mean, you got to put at least a couple teams from the Big 12, I guess. I think a lot of people are saying Texas Tech is a sleeper. I don't know where Tennessee is in the preseason poll, but I think we have them a lot lower. I'm not as confident in their quarterback situation. Even last year, they had to win a lot of games with their defense. And Ole Miss was a weird team for me. I could see them being a top 15 team. I just need to see how all the parts kind of come together, and with losing Jackson Dart, and Ole Miss always seems to lose a couple games they shouldn't each year.
Yeah, I actually have the same question marks on Ole Miss. Why are you surprised Baylor got in that? Sorry, why are you surprised Baylor snuck in there?
There's just some other teams I would have over them. I think they're going to be, they're going to be fine this year. I just wouldn't necessarily start them out in the top 25. I think Georgia Tech might be a little low. I think they could make some real noise if Haynes King can stay healthy and cut down on turnovers.
Yeah, Haynes and Jamal are an interesting combo because they kind of just beat people into submission. And I think Georgia Tech's a team that just for whatever reason keeps being slept on, even though the past couple of years they're I think they might be the only team that's finished in the top 3 in the conference, if I'm not mistaken. They've done like a really good job. The coach there has done a fantastic job. I think the offense is getting slept on. I know he made a big deal over practice a couple days ago. I don't know if you saw that. He was kind of berating them, but I think Georgia Tech's going to be good. I think they're, 23 is probably a little low for them right now, but I think that's going to change. Because they have a tough schedule too. And I do want to go over the honorable mentions. We have Syracuse in there, Boise State, Utah, BYU, and Louisville. Are you surprised that those were the other teams that got votes?
I'm surprised Louisville's not in the top 25.
Yeah. Yeah, I am too. I personally had Louisville on my list originally. So and I believe you did too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you did. Yep. So it's it's interesting to see how opinions differ, and I'm sure a lot's going to continue to change, as the weeks go by. But that kind of brings us to a good segue into week. Let's check this list one more time before we back out of there, so you guys can see and go over it again. Texas number 1, Ohio number 2, Clemson 3, Penn State 4, Georgia 5, Notre Dame 6, Alabama 7, Oregon 8, LSU is 9. And for the finishing of the top 10 is South Carolina. 11 through 15 is Miami, Florida, Michigan, Illinois, and SMU. Then we go to Iowa State, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Indiana, Ole Miss for the top 20. And then 21 through 25 is Tennessee, Texas Tech, Georgia Tech, Kansas, and Baylor. Now, that's actually a great... Oh, man. There it goes. Oh, no, it still has us on there. It won't be a show with one of us unless there's some type of like technical mishap. For those who don't remember, me and Brendan actually used to do a fantasy show, and this used to happen all the time. So it's fun stuff. You'll grow to love it. But let's go back. Week 0 just happened. There were some really interesting games, honestly. Iowa State pulled out, in a thriller 24-21 over Kansas State in Dublin, Ireland. We'll talk about that in a second. Then there was UNLV beating Idaho State by the skin of their teeth, 38-31. Kansas kind of wiped the floor with E.J. Warner and Fresno State, 31-7. Western Kentucky beat the bricks off of Sam Houston. That was 41-24. And Hawaii upset Stanford 23-20. But Brandon, I know that you wanted to talk personally about some of the games that are happening in Dublin and why you believe that they probably shouldn't do that. Just give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't know why they keep on playing games in Ireland, especially the first game. It's always rainy. If you watch that game, there are tons of fumbles. Players were losing their footing quite a bit. And I don't know why the Big 12, it's probably why the Big 12 has had to bring in new teams, because it's ran horribly. Because why would you put your 2 best teams first week of the season to go to Ireland in the rain? Like I don't understand why those 2 teams are playing on week 0. Yeah, I don't get it. I understand the NFL trying to expand. I mean, I understand. I don't like it, but they're trying to expand in all these different countries. I don't know why you need to do that. I kind of understand when. Yeah, I understand when Notre Dame, they send Notre Dame over there, like Fighting Irish. I get it. I just don't know why you have to do it, especially first week of the season. Usually it's sloppy the first week anyway, because the first game of the season.
Yeah.
And I mean, the second half was way better, but the first half, so many mistakes and everything. And with the college football playoff now, I mean, every week, counts, especially for the Big 12, because they're probably only getting 1, maybe 2 teams in.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why they have to go over there and, Avery Johnson's dad and brother going to fight in the parking lot, probably because they had too much Guinness beer.
Insane. That was insane. That should not have. How are you fighting your own kid in the parking lot? Like, that's insane to me.
I just want to know who won. I haven't heard who won the fight.
It looked like the dad won.
Well, that's very embarrassing for the son.
I mean, hey, I'm just going by what I saw on video. I don't hold me on that. But what were your thoughts on the actual game though? Because Iowa State did show some good things with Rocco Beck. I mean, Avery Johnson in that offense started firing towards the end of the game. What were your takeaways from that?
Yeah, I think Kansas State lost their starting running back on the punt. He hurt his ankle, and I think, his name's, excuse me, his first name's Dylan. Do you know his last name?
You're talking about me and last names does not.
Okay. Anyway, he's the starting running back for. He came from Colorado. So anyway, gosh, that's going to bother me. But anyway, they brought in their other 2 running backs, not as explosive. They actually had a fumble when they were in Iowa State territory. They were stopped on 4th down. Iowa State had a fumble in the first quarter when they were in the goal.
Is it
Um,
Dylan Lee?
no, that is
No,
not right.
no.
But anyway, I thought Avery Johnson looked okay. There are parts where he looked better. When he's on, he looks like he could be an NFL quarterback. It's just the consistency, like
Oh,
most mobile.
Dylan Edwards from Kansas State.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
That's it. Dylan Edwards.
Okay.
But yeah, I did not like a lot of the play calling for Kansas State. Um, Sometimes I didn't agree with it, and they went for it a lot. And the one time they missed, I think they had a really good chance of like taking over the game early on. Rocco Beck got hit on a third down, fumbled. They got the ball, up there. If they scored even a field goal there, it might be, a little bit of a different game. But yeah, that's my rant for Ireland.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a fun game, though. I mean, as a Jets fan, I'm a little biased. Anthony Beck is Rocco Beck's dad. Anthony Beck was drafted by the Jets in the first round years ago. So I do like Rocco. I think he's a talented kid. I was surprised that Iowa State ended up winning that game because I just thought, in the grand scheme of things, I thought Kansas was going to put together a better game plan. Honestly, and you kind of saw glimpses of that where there were certain times where it's just like the Kansas State offense just completely exploited their, Iowa State's defense with some huge plays, huge touchdown plays too. So that was like what I was expecting more of in that game. But I want to be a little hesitant because the field was hot garbage. And so I'm going to leave my opinions on both teams right now, like up in the air, because I don't want to be too harsh. You know what I mean? Especially for a game like that. But I did want to go into this next game, which was another nail biter game, was UNLV and Idaho State, 38-31. We actually had our correspondent Brandon Steele live at that game. So if you guys follow him on X, it is at BrandSteele17 on X/Twitter, whatever you call it. He was actually live for that game. He is our UNLV correspondent. Were you surprised that UNLV and the Rebels weren't able to put away Idaho State of all teams?
Well, first of all, I don't know how they could watch Alex Orji and think he should be the starting quarterback. They did. They used. I mean, I think they're going to use him the same way Michigan did, and that might work at a lower level conference because
Right.
at in the Big Ten, like when he's in, he's going to run. But
Right.
he's a dynamic runner. You saw he almost scored that first touchdown. Then he scored another touchdown later. It was almost like the same play, opposite side of the field. He just held onto the ball. They were to throw the ball quite a bit. Thomas, really saved them with his running and everything. Brandon wrote that up. Maybe Mullen just needs some time, to get that rolling. I guess he maybe thought Orji could be his Dak Prescott, but I mean, I'm gonna be honest. If you watch any of the games at Michigan, he should be able to see that he's not. I don't know if it's just he needs more time, but coaches can't allow that kind of offense to be run. He's just not accurate. I don't think he sees the field well. Great runner, from what I've heard. Great person. Stood by it at Michigan, even though he was transferring, played in the bowl game, and helped them beat Alabama. I just think he might need to change positions.
Yeah, and that's no shot at him. Like, I mean, I've seen him play too, and it's not great at the quarterback position, at least like as a passer. I mean, he's got a live arm at times, but the other intangibles for that position aren't really there. So I was curious to see them continue to keep going back and forth, and I think they're going to end up doing that all year, which I think that might be a detriment to them. But I mean, Idaho State's offensive game plan was pretty surprisingly good. A lot of the play write-ups were finding weaknesses in the coverages that UNLV was running, exploiting those, and just kind of making UNLV think something was going to happen one way and just completely taking advantage of that and doing it on the other side. There was a time where I thought UNLV was actually going to lose that game. And, Idaho State, I mean, it's an FCS school. I mean, it's no matter what you feel about G6 programs, they should be able to beat FCS schools pretty easily. The fact that they didn't is a little concerning, but again, It's only week 0. Don't want to get, in over our heads here and go overly critical. The next game was actually a kind of a blowout. It was Kansas 31, Fresno State 7. I know you didn't see much of that, so I want to discuss. I do want to talk about what I was able to see, and we have our correspondent Kyle Jones actually who covers Kansas. We'll have a blurb on from him in a little bit, talking about their week 1 matchup against Wagner. But what I saw out of Jalen Daniels, man, was incredibly impressive. Like, I'm seeing a guy escaping the pocket, running direction, but keeping his eyes downfield as he's doing it. This isn't, for a recent example, like a Jalen Morrell, where he's just trying to run the ball after he's, escaping the pocket. And Jalen Daniels was able to throw from the right side to the left side and hit it on a dime. Like once again, I understand it's Fresno State, but you got to be impressed with that, right?
Yeah, I think he's always been talented. We've seen it. It's just he's dealt with injuries and everything. So maybe he can finally, put that season together. Do you think he has an NFL future?
Jalen Daniels, I think he could be. Yeah, if he tightens up on the passing, I think he could be. He does the right things where he's not escaping. I mean, he's still growing. This is probably his last year, right? But I think he does a good job knowing where his situation is within the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield when he's escaping. And if he can just work on the accuracy a little bit, I think he has the arm to be successful. I really do. I mean, what are your thoughts on him?
I think he could. He's obviously an older player, but we've seen the NFL doesn't necessarily care about that as much now, which I
Right.
always thought, why do they? If you get one contract out of the player, I mean,
That's a win.
yeah, I think it's a win.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I think it'll be interesting because I do think Iowa State and Kansas State are better than Kansas, on paper. But the big, we've seen in the Big 12, anything can happen. And with him, I just don't know if Iowa State could win a shootout with Kansas. I think Rocco Beck is very good, but they did lose the 2 wide receivers to the draft, and
Yes.
there was a lot of drops by Iowa State players, especially from their tight ends. I know it was in the rain and everything, but we'll have to see how they do moving forward. But I think Kansas definitely has a chance with that explosive offense. Whenever you have that, you always have a chance.
Yeah. And Daniel Highshaw probably doesn't get enough credit either. I mean, the whole Kansas rushing attack's gonna be great. So I'm excited to see them, and I know Kyle is too. But another game, that happened on that week 0 slate was Western Kentucky. The Hilltoppers just mollywopped Sam Houston 41-24. Sam Houston's without Casey Keeler, who's now with Temple. Western Kentucky seems like they're kind of picking up where they left off last year. What are your thoughts? Were you surprised that Sam Houston got beat that badly?
Um, I don't know. I think we've seen with Western Kentucky, they bring in transfer quarterbacks and they've gotten prolific passing. So it's not
Yeah.
they can coach the players up and they're talking in the broadcast that when when the head coach goes and looks for quarterbacks or players, he also looks for coordinators and assistant coaches at other schools at the lower
Right.
level, and he's brought
Yep.
some of those in, which I think is super smart. Why not bring in some familiarity when you bring in that player? I think they looked really good. I thought Sam Houston, a lot was left to be desired for the quarterback position. I think they are going to have a rough go of it when they play good teams. Um, I just was not overly impressed with the scheme and everything for Sam Houston, but we'll see if they can, move forward. But Western Kentucky pretty much was doing whatever they wanted most of that game.
Yeah, that's an early conference game. So I mean, if you're in Conference USA, you got to feel good about that, at least from watching it. Maybe not so much about Western Kentucky, but maybe Sam Houston's not necessarily the player that they once were. And the final game on the slate, this was a shocker to many. It was Hawaii, upsetting Stanford 23-20. I personally wasn't able to catch much of this game live. I did watch it on a rerun after the fact. But Brandon, I know you saw it. Give me your takes on this matchup.
I didn't think it was an upset. I thought Hawaii was going to win.
That's crazy. Okay.
Well, I mean,
Thoughts, thoughts.
a lot of teams, not. I mean, the upper tier teams usually don't fly to Hawaii. It's like
Yeah,
the
fair.
lower Power Five teams, and they usually struggle going there. Stanford offensively was challenged, and they lost their best weapon, Elick. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his last
Haye
name.
Minoran?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's with the Titans. He was their whole offense. They look like they're going to be able to run the ball again. They look good with that. Uh, crazy. It was crazy that they didn't. Their running backs didn't score a rushing touchdown last year, which I don't. I just don't know how that's possible.
Right.
But
That's
the
crazy.
I thought they, for the people that didn't watch the game, Stanford got up early 10-0. Hawaii came back. They have a good freshman quarterback, but then he got hurt pretty bad. He was pretty much on one leg the whole game, and Stanford was not able to defend him. Like it was obvious he had to like throw crazy like different
Yeah.
way passes. He ran for first downs. Stanford actually was, had the lead driving. They're probably even a field goal would have probably ended the game. Crazy interception on a short pass. A Hawaii player made a great play, and they were able to tie it. And then Stanford had the ball with under 2 minutes to go. Game's tied at 20. So you think at the worst you're going to overtime, but they decided even though they had only passed for 100 yards,
Hey, we're just gonna keep throwing it. Yeah.
and they said like, yeah, let's just keep on airing it out. So first down. I don't remember if they threw it first down, but they definitely threw it on second down, incomplete. Even the announcers were like, "This is a horrible idea." Uh, and then on third down, they decide, "Yeah, let's throw it again." So Hawaii gets the ball back with like a minute 45. They're able to drive it down for that last field goal. Another great story with the field goal kicker. Apparently, he's Japanese, and he
Yep.
learned how to kick off of YouTube,
That's
and
crazy to me.
and
That's
he
crazy.
he made all of his field goals. They weren't extremely long, but still. So Hawaii was able to come out with the victory. And you know, um, Andrew Luck has a lot of work ahead to bring that program back. I can't believe Stanford has fallen as far as it has from the years with Jim Harbaugh and the early years with David Shaw.
Yeah, it's almost an unrecognizable program right now. And that actually wraps up week 0. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you guys are liking. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. If you're seeing it on your feed, just click that like button. It's completely free. Click the share button, retweet button, wherever you see it. We're going to take a very brief intermission. We're going to go right into week 1 matchups. Brandon's staying here with me. We're going to talk FSU football, UCF football, and a couple other matchups. And stay tuned because we have a lot of guests coming up on this portion of the show. Give us a few minutes and we will be right back. Let me just make sure the mic's not muted this time. Everyone, we're glad that you stayed back with us. This is actually part 2 of the episode. Well, I guess it's, part 3 technically. But we're going to be talking week 1 matchups for the 2025 college football schedule. This is regular season schedule. Brandon has been gracious enough to stick by me for the first portion of this half. And we're going to talk some FSU football. We're going to talk some UCF football. We're going to talk a couple of the games on the schedule. First, I do want to talk FSU with you. They are playing Alabama week 1. Big matchup. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, Alabama, transitioning away from Jalen Milroe to Ty Simpson, a starter. Most people think that it's going to be a more clean passing game. It should elevate. They have quite the trio of wide receivers. They have the freshman phenom Ryan Williams, who had 895 yards last year, and Jimmy Bernard, a transfer from Washington, who had 794, kind of broke out last year, and a transfer from Miami, Isaiah Horton, who had 616. Their running game, even with Milroe last year, wasn't great, and J.M. Miller is hurt and going to miss a few weeks. So I don't know what the rushing attack's going to really look like. Richard Young, first up, he only had 146 yards last year. Daniel Hill, 61 yards. So they're probably going to depend on the passing quite a bit. And FSU was actually good in defending the pass last year. They were horrendous defending the run. They were 111th against the run, but they are bringing in a new defensive coordinator, Tony White from Nebraska, and he had top 7 defenses against the run the last 2 years. And then looking on the other side of the ball, Alabama's also having to replace Jahad Campbell, their best linebacker, and Malachi Morris, safety. They need linebackers Justin Jefferson and Deontay Lawson to step up, and Keon Saab, who is a transfer safety from Michigan. So, but they were pretty good on both sides of the ball last year. Alabama was 19th against the pass, only allowing 185 yards, 52nd against the rush with 144. So that kind of gives Florida State a little bit of a chance. 144, is good, but not great. And with Tommy Castellanos and the new offensive coordinator, Gus Malzahn, they'll need to run the ball. I am a little surprised. I looked at the depth chart for FSU, and the running back rotation is not what most people thought. I have a friend that actually went to see one of the practices when they practice at UNF in Jacksonville, and he spoke about Cam Davis, and he's not even in the top 4 on the depth chart now. It goes Roydell Williams, Gavin Sawchuk, and then Jalen Lucas, a player I really liked last year before he got hurt, from Indiana. He's kind of like a dual threat back, and Osame Kroma, freshman. They really talked well about him. The thing with Tommy Castellanos, I kind of talked, I think, before, maybe it was the pod last week. He is a 58% career completion, which is not great. In 2023, he had 15 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He did have 1,200 rush yards. And then in 2024, he had the 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions before the benching, which is kind of crazy. I think he did, had some really big games. But they do have, under Norvell, what they've done is, which kind of I think worries me, is they are not necessarily growing within. They're really big in the transfer portal. So we saw 2 years ago it worked, and we saw last year it didn't. So they brought in Deuce Robinson, a highly touted receiver, USC, Squirrel White from Tennessee, and Randy Pittman, a tight end from UCF. So they have talent. They have talent on offense. It's if Castellanos can be consistent with passing the ball and making decisions, if Gus Malzahn can scheme that up, because at UCF the last 2 years he struggled with the passing game, and on the defense for Florida State, transfers more. 2 of the 3 starting defensive linemen are transfers, and they're not necessarily great transfers. One's Jason Jenkins. He had 2 sacks in 2 years at Tennessee. James Williams from Nebraska had 5 sacks last year. And then they returned Daryl Jackson, who plays in the middle, who had 5 sacks from the inside. So I think the main thing for Florida State, because they are bringing in a lot of defenders too, secondary. One is Earl Little Jr., and he did not have a good coverage rating on PFF. It was 38.
Ooh, that's not great.
Didn't play a lot, and the other couple of corners are new as well. One's a transfer, and one only played, I think, 57 pass snaps last year. So they need to stop the run and then make this, inexperienced Ty Simpson make the throws to these receivers. Try to make them one-dimensional. And then, Florida State needs to keep the game close and hope that in the fourth quarter, Tommy Castellanos can work some of the magic he has in the past at Boston College and to win some, upsets in that way. I think it's a good time to play Alabama, and they get them in Tallahassee. Obviously, it wasn't great Tommy Castellanos running his mouth before the game, so we'll see what really happens with that. But I'm very interested to see, is Alabama going to recover from last year and return to the top 5? And is Florida State's going to be better? They can't be worse than last year, but how much better? And will that be enough to save Mike Norvell's job?
That's a great question, and we're already starting to hear a little bit of rumblings. I mean, we talked about it last week a little bit between Norvell and Gus Malzahn, who's the offensive coordinator there now, that they're starting to butt heads a bit. Are you worried about that relationship? Do you think that it's, Gus was potentially brought in as like a replacement if they decide to move on from Norvell? What are your thoughts on that relationship?
I for sure hope that the administration at Florida State didn't do that, because, he wasn't successful at UCF. This was a big time for UCF after Frost to kind of, have momentum going to the Big 12. We saw he could run the ball with RJ Harvey. It's just, KJ, Brian and KJ Jefferson thought it'd be a perfect match. Never got rolling. I think we've seen Gus Malzahn needs that special quarterback to really reach the full ceiling of his teams. He has some good schemes and everything. We'll just kind of see how that goes. I wrote in the schedule prediction, I don't expect them to beat Alabama. Obviously, you don't want to lose 40-0, but then the 2 games after that should be winnable games that they need to really win by, at the very least, a couple touchdowns for the confidence. Or I think like last year, the wheels might fall off and, people might start quitting on Norvell. And then, we might see Gus Malzahn midseason as the head coach.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Now switching gears a little bit, actually Thursday has, a handful of games. One of those games is UCF hosting Jacksonville State. You have former Florida Atlantic quarterback Cam Fancher under center as the team's starter. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
It's very interesting. Very similar in how they're approaching this year, because both teams have new coaches. Rich Rod is gone, and Charles Kelly is now in. Was the DC at Auburn, had the 30th ranked defense in total yards. Also, he brought in a FSU connection, old quarterback Clint Trickett, who will be
great
interesting.
Name, by the way, great name.
Great. He under Rich Rod, they obviously ran the ball more. But Trickett at Georgia Southern last year, they were 48th in passing yards per game, 65% pass rate. At Marshall, 63% pass rate. And kind of go back to both teams, lots of transfers. At Jacksonville State, they lost their leading rusher, Trey Stewart, but they brought in 2 transfer running backs from big schools, Cam Cook from TCU and Andrew Paul from Georgia. And then they brought in Gavin Wimsatt from Rutgers, who I was sure Rutgers finally found their quarterback. So the good thing is UCF has a ton of transfers both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
So it's like both teams are kind of feeling themselves out. So I think that it's a kind of a good matchup for UCF. Get, first game at home at night, a lot of excitement. I was surprised Cam Fancher was the starter. I thought he was the third quarterback in that race. I'm kind of surprised that Jackson ended up being third on the depth chart. Ja'Cory Brown is second. From everything I've heard from Frost, an offensive coordinator, Fancher just had the grasp of the offense the best. So probably they wanted, with all these new players, they wanted someone that they were confident could run the offense. He is mobile as well. Obviously, has to cut down on the turnovers. One thing that did surprise me is all three of the starting receivers are transfers, which isn't overly surprising because they had a big turnover. But
Right.
they have Marcus Burt, Dwayne Thomas, and DJ Black. But I've been hearing a lot from freshman Wayden Charles and Carlos Jenkins Jr., who I interviewed earlier this year. They're second on the depth chart, but I thought one of them might break through as a starter, but that might just be like in name only. I'm sure all of them will rotate. And I think some of the best part of their team are the running backs and the tight ends. Tight ends, they have the transfer from Maryland, Dylan Wade, and Kylan Fotts, who was there last year, but not much experience. And they have Miles Montgomery, who's from Jacksonville, and Jaden Nixon, who played at Western Michigan and Oklahoma State. Kind of a thunder and lightning type thing. And then on the defense, transfers again, 3 out of the 4 starters in the secondary are transfers. You kind of highlighted by Jaden Williams out of Syracuse and Philip Dunham from FAU. And in the middle,
FAU guy.
Yeah. And in the middle, John Walker, who's coming back from injury, still wearing a knee brace. So they really need him to stay healthy and kind of anchor that line. So, a lot of transfers for UCF. I do think they have more of the talent, and with Jacksonville State having a new coaching staff, new players, I think UCF will win this game. I think this could be an ugly type win, one where they might ride the rushing game, to the end, because I think they should be able to, with the better talent, to do it that way.
Right.
And
you hope so, at least.
Yes, and you probably don't want to. We've seen Fancher has a problem sometimes with turnovers, so I would think they do not want to have him throwing the ball 30 or 40 times that first game.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on Fancher as the starter there? I want to hear your opinion, then I'll tell you mine.
So I don't know how Jackson didn't win the job. The transfer from Indiana, he played at Tennessee before.
You said he was doing good at the live spring session.
Yeah, let me preface this with all the 3 quarterbacks weren't great. He was the best of the 3, in my opinion. He had the most potential. Ja'Cory Brown, great runner. I've seen some highlights from tape, just inconsistent,
right.
Sometimes bad decisions. And to be totally honest, all the quarterbacks had bad decisions. I thought that it was hard for me because I thought the defensive secondary played great, but then I was like, are they playing great, or is the quarterback playing not great? So I think they're really going to scheme up the big tight ends to get them the ball down the seam. They were running a lot of wheel routes with them, a lot of screens. I think they're going to try to make a lot of easier throws for Fancher. I actually saw someone put on Twitter, why did FAU have Fancher rolling the wrong way all the time?
Dude, I used to say that a lot. It never made any sense to me why you're having a left-handed quarterback roll out on the far side. Never made sense. It was insane.
So maybe, because this is, a lot of people said this too. This is kind of a 1-year gap. They have a couple quarterbacks coming in next year. Freshmen that they really like, probably, just bridging the gap. But, Fancher isn't afraid to run the ball, which is good. But what I saw in the spring practices, obviously he could have gotten better, since then. I thought he left the pocket too early. He wouldn't let the plays develop. But we kind of talked about this too. Maybe they want him to do that. Maybe it's going to be kind of like the Ravens did with Lamar Jackson early on. Let me preface this. I'm not saying he's Lamar Jackson. I'm just saying the scheme was a 1-2 reads. If you have a running lane, run the ball. Keep moving the ball, because the thought is that from all the beat writers I've seen, UCF's defense should be pretty good this year. So it's probably going to be the run the ball, play defense, take some shots, but also all transfer receivers, freshman receivers. So it's not like you have experienced players there. Even Dylan Wade, the tight end from Maryland, he didn't have a lot of passes last year. So a lot of experience for receivers. Actually, the running back room is pretty experienced with Miles Montgomery, senior, and Jaden Nixon is either 4th or 5th year player. And that might be another reason they went with Fancher, because he has the experience.
Yeah, see, it's funny that you mentioned the comment about him rolling on the opposite side of what he's throwing to. For people who don't know, Cam Fancher's a left-handed quarterback. They were having rolling him out to his far side, so all of his reads would have to go to the far side of the field. It never made any sense to me whatsoever why they were doing that, but that happened. Now he did do okay at Marshall, and then FAU obviously was a whole different thing. But there's a lot of issues at FAU, a lot of stuff that happened there that I can't actually say on air. But there was some issues within the locker room between the coaching staff and the players. There were some issues there, so I want to preface that as well. With that said, Fancher's a great kid. He's a tough kid. That kid was taking hits. He was getting concussed in games and getting messed up in games, and he played until like the wheels fell off. He should not have lasted as long as he did. So I do want to give him a shout on that. As a passer, he could improve on some things. His deep reads aren't great. I would like to see him be able to read the safeties a little bit better, especially when he is attempting deep throws, because I feel like sometimes he does kind of just go through those first quick reads and doesn't wait for the plays to develop downfield. So I'm curious to see how that changes with UCF in. And I'm just I'm curious to see if he holds a job. I'm rooting for the kid. He is a great kid, but it remains to be seen. But we have another correspondent in the green room. It is Cody Henderson from the League Winners. Cody is our Cal correspondent. Make sure you guys follow Cody on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, at Cody CODY TLW, and we're gonna bring him in right now. Cody, how you doing, man?
Doing good, guys. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So Cody, Cal week one matchup, going to Oregon State to face the Beavers. Give us your breakdown, your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, so obviously Vegas right now has Oregon State as a favorite. I believe the line went from Oregon State is 3-point favorites to now 1.5-point favorites. So it has shifted a little bit here towards Cal's favor. But I really think a lot of that just is kind of based on the fact that a lot of people see the big name players that have kind of left the program throughout the offseason. But to me, I mean, Cal should still be favorited in this game. I know Malik Murphy is going to be a really good quarterback for Oregon State. Being at Duke and being at Texas, he's a gamer. So, and Oregon State did bring in a lot of other players too to kind of bolster their trenches. And I know a lot of Cal fans have PTSD playing up there in Corvallis, considering what's kind of happened in the past. But at the same time, I mean, I do think Cal is going to go up there and probably win this game by a couple of scores. I understand that, there might be some hesitancy because they're rolling out a true freshman at quarterback. His first game is on the road at Corvallis. It's not the ideal situation for him. But at the same time, I think the defense keeps it close while the offense probably starts out slow at first. But I do think that they'll probably pick it up probably around the second half. And then I think they do end up probably rolling Oregon State right there in the second half and getting the win.
Do you think that the Beavers being favored by that much, do you think that's just solely because of like Mendoza and injuries and those guys left? Do you think the media is not paying attention to what Cal has on the roster?
Yeah, I do. I think that's a lot of it. I mean, you see the kind of big names, Mendoza, Odd, Endries, some of those guys that have left. So I get where they're coming from, but to me, that just means that they're not really paying attention as much as you think they are, because they didn't really see all the players that they brought in, right? So, and then Cal also I do think has a now better coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, which does make a big difference too. I mean, how many times did we see Cal? I mean, they had Mendoza, they had Ott, they had injuries, but they couldn't move the ball in the first half in a lot of games. So, I mean, there's only one way to go from there, and that's up. And so I think if the offense could move the ball a little bit better in the first half, sustain some drives, keep the defense off the field because we know how good the defense is going to be again. Yeah, I mean, I am surprised that the line is set like that, but at the same time, I'm not surprised,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And for people who aren't familiar with Cal, a lot of guys left. Tobias Merriweather left. I think Tron Grizzle might be the most veteran guy on wideout on the team right now. Am I mistaken on that?
No, he is. So the depth chart just got released about an hour ago, and he's one of the starting wide receivers along with Mark Hamper, which is I know a lot of people thought Keon Graves would be that starting wide receiver on the outside from he's a transfer from Ohio State, but they're going to go with Mark Camper out there along with Tron, and then Jacob DeJesus over there in the slot. So completely new receiving room outside of Tron for the most part. And then Keon, but Keon's not listed as a starter. So
yeah, I mean, solid rotation guy at least. I think people are kind of sleeping on Jacob DeJesus. I don't think people are too familiar with him because he was at the at UNLV, G5, G6, whatever we call him now, program. But he is a good player. I think people are going to be very surprised at the passing attack that Cal's going to have this year. And before we let you go, Cody, I actually wanted to get your opinion on the Stanford and Hawaii matchup because Stanford got upset by Hawaii. Just give us your thoughts on that match.
So my honest thoughts were, Stanford's getting a lot of praise in the offseason, bringing in Andrew Luck as GM. And then they got Frank Reich as their head coach, which he's just an interim head coach just for a year. And then to lose that game that way after you dominated, like coming out the gate, it just felt like one sick joke, right? I mean, I know a lot of Cal fans were laughing, but then all of a sudden now the Frank Reich decision kind of looks really dumb.
Doesn't look good.
It doesn't look good, right? Like it just kind of feels like a mess. I mean, Goldbranson is not a good quarterback. He might be one of the worst starting quarterbacks in all of college football right now, and I say that genuinely. He's just not good. So they do have some good players. Like I'm not going to deny that, and they've got a good running back. But man, they've got to figure it out, and they really need to figure it out. Like Cal needs them to figure it out too, because they're kind of paired together. And like if Cal is doing well and Stanford's not doing well, now they're kind of both less attractive, if that makes sense, right? But if they're both doing well, then now they're both more attractive if realignment ever comes knocking on the door here in the next couple of years. So it's in Cal's best interest for Stanford to be good, and I know Cal fans don't want to hear that, but at the same time, like both those schools need to be good in order for them to get attention. But yeah, after I watched that game, it just felt like a sick joke. I'm like, what is Stanford doing? Like what this all feels like I don't know, just a big joke, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were surprised, except for Brandon, who, had Hawaii. But I mean, he's one of the few that can say "I told you so." But before we get you out of here, Cody, let everyone know where they can find you out on your social medias and everything.
Yeah, so you can find me on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Cody, all lowercase, at Cody TLW, no spaces. And then you can find me on Instagram as well too. I believe it's Cody Henderson _TLW. So you can find me on one of those sites. But that's pretty much it. That's where I'm at right now.
I appreciate you coming on, Cody. You take care, man. Thank you.
All right, peace out, guys.
Bye. That was Cody Henderson. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your sports information on social media. And while you're here, make sure you're liking on the video, sharing the video, commenting, doing what you can to help spread us. Now, Brandon, before I let you go, there was another game we wanted to talk about, and that was probably one of the biggest games on the week one slate, and that is Texas, Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that game? Because that's just like that's a big boy game.
It is, and I think it's crazy. There's some people saying that Texas is going to come in there and blow out Ohio State, and I don't believe that. I think Texas could win. I mean, I think it's very possible. I think Ohio State still returns a lot of players. Obviously, the quarterback, Julian Sang, you don't really know. But, I mean, the talent they have, like, you pretty much just don't screw it up. And I think that might be a lower scoring game because both are going to have good defenses, run the ball. Everyone's saying Arch Manning's going to win the Heisman, but we don't know. I mean, the games he played last year weren't against, high-end competition. So Columbus is nasty. I mean, the fans are nasty. It's going to be an environment that isn't going to be easy. I would say if Texas falls down early, it might be a problem because we saw kind of in the playoff last year. I know different players are on the teams, but they weren't able to move the ball consistently and everything. and Ohio State, lost their 2 top running backs, but they always have good running backs and everything. So I think this is going to be which quarterback does not make the mistake, which does not, turn the ball over in a bad situation. It's not necessarily winning the game. It's not, losing the game. Like we talked, first game of the season, you're usually not running, full steam ahead, trying to figure things out. Ohio State has a new offensive and defensive coordinator. They have Patricia, defensive coordinator. So a lot of Buckeye fans are a little leery about that, but we'll see how that all goes.
As they should be.
Yes. I don't know how he keeps getting jobs, honestly, but and like high profile jobs, the Eagles, now this.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are saying Caleb Downs might be the best player in college football, and he could, be up there if he wasn't just a safety, be up there in the NFL draft next year. So it's going to be very interesting. I saw a couple of people thinking that it's going to be, under 40 total, just because it's going to be, more of a defensive type game.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how that game plays out. I am a fan of Julian Sayin. I also am a big fan of Arch Manning. Obviously, Jared Myers-Smith is an elite wide receiver. And I mean, Ohio State just has a great offense, as much as I know that you probably don't like saying that or hearing that as a Michigan fan. But on the other end, I've told you how much I really like Arch Manning. I think he's a perfect combination of like what the two Manning brothers, I mean, obviously they're his uncles, but what they did on the field. I think he has the smarts to dissect defenses, and I think he has the mobility or pocket mobility of Eli, where he's like slick. Like, I mean, he's obviously a lot faster than Eli is, like a lot more mobile, but he like has that slick pocket mobility where you think he's going to get sacked, and the dude just doesn't get sacked for whatever reason. I think he's really good at that. And I've spoken about Jack Endries a million times, the former Cal tight end. I'm going to keep running on that train right now. I think he's a great tight end. I think he's going to be a great safety valve for Arch Manning at Texas. I think it's going to be huge for him. I'm very curious to see how that relationship between those two guys end up developing this year. And there was another game I wanted to talk to you about, and that's LSU Clemson. LSU travels to Clemson for this week 1 matchup for college football. What are your thoughts on that game?
I don't trust Brian Kelly, especially the early games. When they've been playing Florida State, their offense should be good. For some reason, he can't find a running back, which is weird because LSU has always had good running backs. Also, the defense has kind of been iffy. Like I said, I'm not huge on Clemson. They're a top 10 team, but they return so many players, and I just think Kate Klubnik will be able to put up enough yards. They have tons of running backs, receivers, everything. Defense is going to be tough again, so I think they'll come out on top of that game. I actually think they could win that game by double digits.
You think Clemson can win it by double digits?
I do.
Ooh, so is it just a no faith in Kelly thing, or is it a no faith in Garrett Nussmeier too?
No, I think Garrett Nussmeier is good. I just, if they're not able to run the ball, I think Clemson will make them one-dimensional and it'll make it very tough on them.
Yeah, and plus it's kind of tough because they're at Clemson, right? Like, I mean, I think if it's at LSU,
it's totally different. It's totally different.
Yeah, it's a little, for sure. I mean, okay, so actually I want to ask you this hypothetical then. If it was at LSU, would you give it for LSU, or would you still go Clemson?
I'd say it's a toss-up.
Yeah, okay. I like that. 50-50 is not bad. And actually, there is one more game. I do want to talk Notre Dame at Miami with you. That's another big matchup. Notre Dame seems to be scheduling a lot of ACC matchups. It's at Miami. Notre Dame is ranked number 6 on the AP poll. Miami is at 10. What are your thoughts there?
I think that game is more important to Miami because I think Notre Dame could lose that early game. Well, one, they're not in a conference. I know a lot of people don't think Carson Beck's good, but at least he's played quite a bit. We talked about Notre Dame with CJ Carr going to
Right.
Miami. It's tough because I want to say Miami wins because they're at home, but Notre Dame does have very good defense. And they have Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
So it's close, but I do think Notre Dame has the better coach, better in late game situations. So I have them winning in a close one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, as we've talked about this, previously off air, I'm a CJ Carr fan. I really like him. I'm not as high on Beck this year because I don't know how the playmakers and all that's going to mash up. What they do have going for them is that it is a week 1 matchup. I'm just curious because Notre Dame always comes out swinging, and I would love to see how that plays out. So, Brandon, before I let you go, let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at HayB3, and I'll be putting out some previews for Florida State very soon.
All right. I appreciate you coming on, Brandon. Take care, man.
All right. Thanks.
All right. And that was Brandon Haye of the League Winners. Make sure you guys are following him for FSU, UCF coverage, and he'll be doing a couple miscellaneous stuff for us as well. I do have my next guest in the waiting area, but before we get to there, make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the YouTube channel if you're watching it on YouTube, share it where you can. This is College Football Now. We're weekly every Tuesday, bringing you reporters who are on site and on location talking college football. On the next one, he's actually going to be at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia for the Syracuse and Tennessee matchup, as well as the Virginia Tech and South Carolina matchup. You can find him at wakeupcalldt.com. I am joined now by Daniel Totora. Dan, how are you doing, man? Thank you for coming on the show. Oh, Dan, I can't. I think the mic's out. Not in. I can't hear you, brother. Is it on? Let's see. Get you on there. Oh, it has your mic muted. Huh. Interesting. I can't hear you still. Oh, let me shoot you a text. See if we can get there. Mic is muted. So apologize for the Oh, is that good now? Dan, can you hear me, man? All right, still can't hear. I'm gonna take him out for a second. Give me 1 second on that. Before we get back to Dan, we are having some technical difficulties on that end. We are going to bring in some blurbs from some of our beat reporters. This is Kyle Jones for the Kansas Jayhawks. The Jayhawks, and he writes, the Jayhawks are coming off a big time win in their season opener. They're looking to keep momentum going against FCS Wagner. He expects there to be some growing pains with all new faces on the team, but that wasn't the case in the slightest. The offense scored 5 of its 6 possessions, and the defense just allowed a single score. With Mizzou on the horizon, this is a classic trap game spot. However, he does not believe that Wagner, has enough to make the Jayhawks pay for those mistakes. And we're going to see if the audio issues for Dan are resolved. Like I said, it's Dan Totora at wakeupcalldt.com. You can find them on anywhere that your podcast is available. Dan, hopefully the audio issues are good. How you doing, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, for some odd reason, this thing decided to change its settings, which have never been changed before. But yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
Hey man, I've already had technical issues on my end. Literally the same thing happened to me. I was coming back from a break. But for those listening right now, watching, Dan, you've been a broadcaster for a few decades. You're going to be at Syracuse, taking on Tennessee at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Let's talk about that matchup. It's Steve Angeli makes his first start for Syracuse. Joey Aguilar makes his first start for Tennessee. Just give us your thoughts on this upcoming game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I mean, this is a world that could have been Nico Imaeva of Tennessee versus Kyle McCord, who was going to have that other year of eligibility. So, I mean, if it was that, I'm saying 400 yards versus 500 yards and, 40, 45, 42 for the game. But, Joey Aguilar for Tennessee's side, I mean, he goes to UCLA for a cup of coffee, but really was there at App State. where we got to see him. And now Steve Angeli, hasn't had a lot of time out there himself. However, the time that he did have, 6 of 7 in a huge college football playoff game that helped to get Notre Dame past Penn State and into the national championship. So, I mean, these are 2 quarterbacks that have not been starters. Well, I should say Joey has not been a starter at Tennessee, and then Steve has never been a starter. So to look at this matchup, there are some question marks. There's some change, and I find it to be very interesting how both of these quarterbacks are going to be under center for teams that they weren't on before, and just what a Steve Angeli-led team looks like since he was waiting in the wings at Notre Dame. So there's a lot to be said about what this matchup looks like on paper, but obviously both of these teams are coming to play. And I think this is going to be an interesting game. I'm probably going against the grain, but I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Yes, we've seen Aguilar play at App State, but App State's a different animal than what he's going to be seeing playing in the SEC. And you hit the nail on the head for Angeli too. A lot of people we don't really know what an offense is going to look like with Angeli. I mean, even in practice, we haven't necessarily been seeing enough live reps to see how that's going to look like. And there was, a bit of controversy between him getting the nod over Ricky Collins, who transferred from LSU. Were you surprised that Coach Fran Brown went that route?
I'm not. I asked Fran about what the intangibles were, and he made the statement that Steve Angeli has made relationships with everyone on the team, that he finds it important to connect with every single person individually. That question was actually asked again tonight by somebody else from the media, asking Steve about what Fran said to me about it. So, I definitely respect the fact that this was a competition for a while. That's what we heard from E-Rob, the defensive coordinator of Syracuse, what we heard from Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator. It's what we heard from Fran. And Fran answered my question at ACC kickoff going into fall camp and said this was an open competition. So, I as far as I know, going into that second scrimmage and coming out of that second scrimmage, it was still a competition, which means both of these guys were doing things that they needed to be doing. Am I surprised? Not necessarily. I thought maybe they would start with Ricky, shift to Steve, but going to Steve right away makes me believe that Fran and this offense and Jeff Nixon and the crew see something in him to start with him right from the jump. Because keep in mind, Ricky, I got to break the news that Ricky was with the team in San Diego practicing during the Holiday Bowl preparation. So he was with the team in late December going into January, was obviously there for spring ball. Steve was not there for spring ball, and Steve did enough just in fall practice to have the edge. I'm not going to sit here and question Fran Brown on this decision, and I'm also not going to sit here and say anything negative about Ricky. It's a shame that there are people out there that were almost trying to get Steve to say something about Ricky, get the coaching staff to say something about him, because the storyline was, we love Ricky. Then the storyline was, we love Steve, who's Ricky. And now the story is, how bad is Ricky? And is Ricky going to transfer? And, if I closed my eyes and played pin the tail on the media, I could have told you that this was going to happen exactly the way that it happened, in the sense of how quickly they turn on one of these guys. But I want to make it known to the world that Ricky Collins Jr. in no way, shape, or form, in my opinion, is slacking and was not playing poorly. It's just that Steve got the edge, and in the world we live in today in college football, there's a starter and everybody else transfers. Well, I'm hoping that Ricky Collins works, continues his relationship with Steve. I hope they help each other, and I hope that Ricky realizes that this is a place where, he can be. I don't have a bad thing to say about either one of them.
Yeah, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, I don't really want to see Ricky leave. That's I don't want to say it's a concern, because I don't think he will, but it's something that's always in the back of your mind now, especially with the way, as you just said, the college landscape kind of is now. If a lot of guys don't get that starting job, they don't necessarily want to work as a backup and potentially get into that role as a starter going forward. They want it handed to them. And I know Ricky does have a great relationship with Fran, his son, and the rest of the guys on the team too. So I think it would be pretty heartbreaking to see him go that route. But I did want to get your thoughts too, because from the outside, after Trevor Pena left, he entered the transfer portal, went to Penn State. From the outside, a lot of people are questioning the Syracuse offense and the offensive playmakers. But let people know who's been standing out to you entering this matchup, and who do you think could have success against that Tennessee defense?
Yasin Willis has dropped body fat and then dropped body fat and gained muscle and then gained more muscle. There's something about Willis, and y'all need to be paying attention. I just saw him, and he seems comfortable. He seems very hungry. I like the running back group. I really do. I like Will Nixon. He told me last year was supposed to be it. That was the end of the story. He was supposed to play last season and go to the NFL, and he got hurt, so he's back. Keep in mind, he worked with Michael Penix Jr., and after working with Michael Penix, he's, moved on to work with Kyle McCord and now Steve Angeli and Ricky Collins. So I'm excited to see what Will can be catching out of the backfield. I'm excited to see that from Yasin. Yasin told me that he's getting back to being himself. So he's happy he's wearing number 6 that he grew up with. And I said, well, what is that? Who is that person you're getting back to being? And he just said, that guy, that physical guy, that between the tackles guy. And so, I'm excited about that. The home run hitter, Malachi James, if you miss him once, you don't get a second shot. And so I'm really excited about the running backs, and I'm excited about the wide receivers. Umari Hatchery's found his way. He's obviously back here from last season. And of course, Daryl Gill Jr., I think he's going to be doing some good things for the team. I'm looking forward to Dan Villari at tight end. Dude got bigger and is probably in the best shape of his life and probably in the best position right now for himself to have a future beyond Syracuse. And so, I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to the some of the new guys coming in, like Jonte Cook, and what he can do, and obviously the playmaking ability that he has, his one-handed grabs, and just the danger that he becomes. And then don't forget about starting corner, 17-year-old true freshman Demetrius Samuel Jr., who will be potentially playing on both sides of the ball and could be returning. We'll see. So what am I excited about? I'm excited about two-way Samuel. I'm excited about the running back room. I'm excited about the receiving core, which includes the tight ends. A healthy Jamie Tremble can be a dangerous Jamie Tremble, and a guy that really people can't scheme for because they haven't seen a lot of him, hailing from Christian Brothers Academy in Albany. And I'm looking forward to seeing that. Obviously, his brother plays in the NFL, Tommy, and his dad played before that. So I'm definitely looking at that. I'm interested to see who's going to come up in the linebacker room. And I will say this about Tank Wilson, who I just spoke with within the last couple hours. He doesn't have a tattoo on his arm. He has a brand on his arm. And anyone who can be branded does not really respond to pain in a negative way. So I think that if you can brand Tank Wilson, he may be branding someone this weekend. So he's excited to be back. We talked about God laying in that hospital bed. And, I asked him, I said, what did God say to you when you were laying in that bed? He said, I'm gonna give you a second chance. Don't mess it up. So there's a lot to be excited about for sure. There are some question marks, and Tennessee, you don't get to hear those. No, I'm kidding. But there are there's definitely some question marks in the kicking game, and there's some question marks at linebacker and who's going to really show up at defensive back. But I would probably say I'm most excited about the skill guys that Steve Angeli has. And I'm looking forward to seeing this newly put together Syracuse offensive line of 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 301, 320, 3 this, 3 that, 4 something. And Byron Washington, man, 400 pounds, but he wears it like it's 280. So good for him on that.
Yeah. We talked about that off air. It's just Syracuse now having like a real power conference line on the offensive side of the ball is going to be great. And I know we said that Angeli, we haven't seen, a sample size of him at the quarterback in a live setting really. But, Yasin Willis, he, for people who don't know, this is a 6'1", 220-pound guy who was listed in spring. He can only imagine he's gotten bigger since then. And he looks fantastic. If he's anything remotely of how he was a speed and power back in high school, the running game is going to be deadly. And of course, you mentioned the wide receivers. That's kind of the other thing that helps Angeli out too, is that I know people were worried when Pena left, but they have a great group of guys, and that doesn't even include Darius Johnson in the slot, who actually fractured his leg, but he'll be back, sometime in the middle of the year. So I know we talked a little bit, you kind of you foreshadowed it a little bit at the beginning of your entrance here, but how do you see this Syracuse Tennessee game playing out?
Yeah, honestly, I think that first and foremost, for those of you that know that it's a 2-score on the side of Tennessee, if you're a betting person, maybe you should have some fun with that. I think it's a disrespectful score, but this is Vegas also thinks the Cowboys are going to make the Super Bowl every year. And I am not I mean, I cheer for I hope the best for the Cowboys. I just don't think they're going to the Super Bowl anytime soon. But I am an empathizer. But Tennessee and Syracuse, again, you have 2 quarterbacks on a new team, and there's going to be a challenge there. I keep thinking, it keeps coming back to me, this is going to be a game where there's going to be a turnover or 2, and whoever can get that 1 turnover or 2 turnovers, this could be the difference in what I think might be a very close score, at least at a certain point in the second half. I don't imagine this being a blowout. Maybe later on it becomes more of an expanded score, but I'm thinking in the third quarter it's going to be close, could end close. I'm seeing a fumble. I'm seeing Syracuse get that recovery, and I think that this is going to come down to, can you get the other team to turn the ball over? I know Tennessee comes from the SEC, but it's not the same Tennessee team, not the same quarterback that went to the college football playoff. And on Syracuse's side, yeah, okay, you don't have Kyle McCord anymore, but you have a guy how many backup quarterbacks in the nation can step into a college football playoff do or die game, go 6 for 7, and help to lead your team into the national championship? So I'm leaning on Syracuse to win this game. I think it's going to be a close score, but I'm picking Syracuse. No, not because it's my hometown, not because, I've covered this team for all 21 plus years that I broadcasted, but because of the fact that I believe that Syracuse is going to be on the right side of the turnover margin, and I think they're going to get this done. And watch out for my guy, number 36, Malachi James, because if they let him return a punt or a kick, there might be a cool breeze in Mercedes-Benz Stadium as he rushes to the end zone.
So I love that prediction. I know people are going to think that we're homers because I also cover Syracuse.
Dude, I don't care. I didn't pick them to win every game this year.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I do have Syracuse sneaking out a victory for a lot of the reasons that you just said. Joey Aguilar, plus, an Appalachian State, he was still, I don't want to say necessarily a turnover machine, but he was averaging 12 per year while he was there. There's opportunities for Syracuse to take advantage of. But I did want to also briefly touch upon, because you are going to be at the very next game at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and that is Virginia Tech and South Carolina going at it with Lenora Sellers, manning the trenches manning at the signal caller position for South Carolina. We have Kyron Drones for Virginia Tech. I just want to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I think that, and I've had the opportunity to talk about this a little bit going into it. I'm excited for this game. I'm really looking forward to seeing Lenora Sellers because he was committed originally to Syracuse. Him and I talked multiple times. I spoke with his brother, who they also had offered. And Lenoris, as I think I told you, when him and I spoke the last time, where he was, there was this conversation we had, and he paused in these moments, and where he was pausing, it didn't sound good. And I just remember sitting there in the room thinking to myself, the way he's answering these questions, how he's answering them, the pauses he's taking, I just don't feel like he's coming to Syracuse. Shortly after, he decommitted and went to South Carolina, and now he's a national quarterback, and they talk about him with NIL, and they talk about him in general with what he can do. I'm excited to see Lenoris, but on the other side with Drones, Kyron Drones, don't underestimate this guy either. And the guy that is teaching him, offensive coordinator, and somebody I got to know over the years, and I consider a close friend, and that being the former Tulsa Golden Hurricane head coach Philip Montgomery, who was brought in to lead the offense under Brent Pry. So I think that Virginia Tech has talent, and you also have to keep, I mean, we talk about offensive line with Syracuse. Well, the offensive line is all new when we look at Virginia Tech, and it's pretty much all new when you look at Syracuse. So, two of these ACC schools having to put out a totally new offensive line for the most part in these ACC, SEC athletic kickoff games. I think South Carolina is going to be too much in this game. I think this game is going to blow out into a disproportionate victory for the Gamecocks, but in no way, shape, or form do I think that means that Virginia Tech is not moving in the right direction, that Virginia Tech cannot do some good things this season, play spoiler. I know they want to be more than spoiler, but I think whatever happens in this game, do not underestimate Virginia Tech. I just think Lenora Sellers and South Carolina are trying to show the world that though they played spoiler to multiple teams last year, they're not looking to play spoiler. They're looking to play victor, and they're looking to have a place in the college football playoff. And I think Lenora Sellers and the South Carolina team is going to be a pain in the butt for a lot of people in the SEC. So I'm just going to say, watch out on that side of things. I don't think Virginia Tech's winning this game, but I do think that there's talent here with both of these squads. And I think South Carolina is going to come out firing. Remember that this team, I think, ended the regular season winning 6 in a row last year. So yeah. I'm excited to see what happens now.
Yeah, I am too. It's going to be a great game. We'll actually have coverage alongside Dan there, with our correspondent, Kay Rayborn. Before I let you go, Dan, can you just let everybody know where they can find you on your social medias and your show?
Yeah, so Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, X at Call DT, Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT, and of course we're live Monday through Friday with Wake Up Call from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're on YouTube and Facebook, both / Wake Up Call DT, and we're on live internet streaming radio, wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. If you forgot all of that, you could simply go to wakeupcalldt.com, and every single link is there, as well as all of our social media, our articles, and a link to our podcast as well. I think we're about to hit 2,000 shows that people can download out there. So I appreciate everybody that's been good to Wake Up Call, and I appreciate you, Thomas, for being good to me in these last few months that we've gotten to really connect with each other. And I'm hoping the best for the league winners, and hoping the best for you and your team to grow and blossom and be successful. And it's going to be fun to talk college football with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, we can talk about life anytime too. I love shooting it with you. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We'll connect after.
Sounds good. And have a good night. And to everybody watching and listening, make sure that you show this man and his team some love, and y'all be safe, and God bless.
Appreciate you, Dan. That was Dan Tortora. Make sure you guys are following him at Call DT on Twitter /X. You can find him at wakeupcalldt.com for all of his podcast articles, etc. We do have 2 guys in the back room. I know the time ran a little extra after the audio issues. First one I'm going to bring in is Trevor Hammond from covering Wisconsin for us. I hope I pronounced the last name right.
You got it correct.
Perfect. I love that. For those who don't know, Trevor's a new member of the League Winners. He's going to be covering those Wisconsin Badgers. They have their week 1 matchup. Just dive in on what the team's going to look like this year and their matchup for week 1.
Yeah, so week 1 they play Miami of Ohio on Thursday, and it's an important year for this Badger program. Luke Fickell's is entering his 3rd year as the head coach. They just hired out new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes from Kansas. They have a brutal schedule this year, so starting off week 1 on a positive note is going to be very important for them. They brought in transfer quarterback Billy Edwards Jr. from Maryland.
Yep.
Jeff Grimes runs a very run-heavy offense, lots of outside zones, a lot of multiple tight ends, play-action passing. Going back to more of Wisconsin roots, I'd say Phil Longo was the previous offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Air raid, kind of getting away from, running it down your throat like how Wisconsin used to be under Paul Christ and everything. So change of philosophy now, which I think is going to be a better fit for this Wisconsin football team. So what I'm looking for, especially week one, is, are they going to run the ball better this year than they did last year? They have 3 returners for the offensive line: Joe Brunner, Renfro, and Riley Malman. Them be able to establish the line of scrimmage is going to be really important. They completely overhauled the D line. That was a very important thing that they needed to address in the offseason. They need to get bigger. They need to get quicker, faster, stronger there. They brought in 6 transfers. 5 of them were listed on either starters or second teamers in the first initial depth chart. So I'm looking forward to how their D line plays. Can they create some pressure? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Week one, Miami of Ohio is a good program. Won the MAC in 2023, runner-ups last year, lost the conference championship to a good Ohio team. So, it's going to be a tough schedule this year for Wisconsin. Their win total's set at 5.5, over under 5.5.
That's tough.
So, personally, I think, from everything I've read, everything I've seen, everything, people I've talked to, they're going to be better than people think. Allegedly, they're a lot quicker and stronger and faster in fall camp at this time this year than they were last year.
Right. They have Billy Edwards starting, right?
Correct.
How do you feel about him?
He's not going to go out and win the Heisman. He's not going to, win go out and, win games. But I think if he is able to stay healthy and if he is able to, manage the game, be a good game manager, it'll be better than nothing against, Braden Locke got thrown under the bus last year. Tyler Van Dyke tore his ACL against Alabama. So Braden Locke got thrown under the bus. He transferred over to Arizona. So I think if Billy Edwards can just control the game, not make too many big, turnovers, too many, do anything crazy, just because they're going to try to establish the run first and, be a run first team. So I guess time will tell, depending on, how I feel about him. But as of right now, I feel more on the positive side about him.
Yeah. We kind of have no choice, right? With week, until the games start playing, we kind of have no idea. And you kind of said, week one, kind of a good test because Miami of Ohio is not really a slouch per se, but they're going to be easier than the opponents they're playing next on the schedule. But before I let you go, how do you think that game's going to play out? Who do you think ends up winning that matchup?
So Badgers are favored by 17.5. I do think that is a good line. Miami of Ohio is returning no starters on offense, lost all 11 starters, and are only returning 4 on defense. Adam Trick and Silas Walters are studs on Miami's defense. Daquan Finn, transferred from Baylor, used to play at Toledo, 2023 MAC Player of the Year, for Toledo. So he's a good quarterback.
Right.
I do think Miami of Ohio keeps it close early, but I do think the Badgers' size and quickness and just overall talent wins out in the end. I think they win about 34-17. That's kind of what I would predict. Hopefully not as much of a sweat as week one last year, where they were down in the fourth quarter to Western Michigan week one last year, another MAC team.
Was bad.
That one had to sweat that one out a little bit, but I'm not planning on sweating this one out as much, but hopefully not. But I think Miami of Ohio keeps it close. Wisconsin's offensive line ends up winning out in the end, wears them out. So
I love that prediction, man. Before I let you go, let everyone know where they can find you on your social media.
Yeah, so as of right now, X is the best place to find me at Trevor_Hammond. Covering all things Wisconsin sports in general. So
I appreciate it. Trevor, thank you so much for coming on, bro.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you take care.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye. That was Trevor Hammond, one of our newest members at the League Winners. You can follow him on X at Trevor_Hammond, HAMANN. I have another guest on here. He's been waiting very patiently. I do appreciate it. He is our Auburn correspondent, is Shane Barrett. Shane, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. It's game week. I'm so excited.
Oh, dude, I know you got to be hyped. Week 1 matchup. It's the Auburn Tigers versus the Baylor Bears. Give us your thoughts on that match.
Oh, yeah. I have said this in multiple different areas. I cannot remember a more important first game for Auburn, possibly in my lifetime. Going into this Baylor game, we are going to find out who Auburn is, I think, very, very quickly. And the way I see that is we're going to have probably a top 30 defense again. And we've got plenty of weapons around our quarterback. But that's the ultimate question: is who is our quarterback for the longevity of the season? If you've read my preview for the Auburn Tigers on the league winners, you'll know I did not mince my words. If Jackson Arnold does not have it in the first game, Hugh Freeze has got to pull him. He stayed way too loyal for way too long to Peyton Thorne. I don't think he honestly gave Hank Brown enough shake last year. I think the mistakes that Brown made were honestly correctable. And for some reason, he went back to Thorne, and I think that cost us multiple games. So this year, I'm hoping he has a quicker hook with Jackson Arnold. From everything I'm hearing, though, Arnold is doing well. And Hugh Freeze, even today, I think, or yesterday, said he likes the decision-making that Jackson Arnold has had. And that's extremely encouraging, because if you know anything about Auburn last year, our decision-making at the quarterback position was questionable at best. We had turnovers galore. And so I think if we can maintain ball control and not turn the ball over, I don't know if from what I've been hearing, I don't know if Baylor has the dudes to hang with us long term. Like, I don't think they have the depth to go against Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton Jr. and Malcolm Simmons and Perry Thompson. And that's just the receivers.
It's a nutty receiving group. It really is, man. That's one of the things that confused me last year too. Like that quarterback position that you talked about, where Peyton Thorne was kind of given that long leash, and then Hank Brown came in. He showed some good stuff in the beginning. Obviously, he had some struggles, and now he's out of the program completely now.
Yep.
And then I believe there was a third quarterback who started a game, if I'm not mistaken.
Holden Garner. I don't know if Holden is still with the program. He might have transferred, but Walker White was there, and he actually transferred to Baylor.
Yeah, says I knew there was one of them that actually transferred to Baylor. So that whole situation was very interesting. And now with Jackson Arnold, it's interesting because he does have another guy behind him who potentially could be the future for the program.
Deuce Knight, baby.
Yeah, I was about to say, can you just talk about Deuce a little bit?
Yeah, so Deuce Knight, I believe he ended up as a 5-star quarterback out of Mississippi. He's a lefty. He's got a huge frame, and he is mobile. I am extremely excited about Deuce. I think, like you said, Deuce is going to be the future. It's going to be a matter of time, I think, before we see him at some point this season. He should get playing time probably in game 2 at the very earliest, and probably as late as game 3, I figure. And then probably again against Mercer later on in the season. I think that's at a minimum. I think to keep this guy around the program and to keep him at Auburn, you've got to continue to give him playing time, whether it's in meaningful moments or not. But just get him that experience, show him that you're willing to commit to him long term, because I think he's got all the talent in the world to lead Auburn to places we hadn't been in a long, long time.
Yeah, that's kind of key, is just getting the guy. He doesn't necessarily have to start every game this year, but just getting him time for when he does start. I think that's huge for the program. And so now you said that you think Baylor, doesn't have the guys to keep up with you. What do you think the final score is, and how do you think Auburn gets there?
Man, I originally, I think I put in the article 21-17. And I think it's going to be close. I think it's still going to end up close. I don't know if it'll be a blowout. If it does, then Auburn's offense is doing what I've hoped for. But I think it'll be like 21-17, 24-21, something like that. Ultimately, with Arnold probably getting at least 1, if not 2 passing touchdowns, and Damari Alston getting in for a rushing touchdown. And then ultimately, I mean, Sawyer Robertson for Baylor is no slouch. Like, he could easily press 4. Depending on who comes out in this quarterback class for QB1, I think he's got enough talent to get there. Even if he doesn't, he's still going to be an NFL ready player. And then they've got Bryson Washington too, who is I think he had 1,000 yards as a freshman last year. So he's no slouch of a running back either. But they aren't facing guys like Kelchick Falk or Jay Crawford and DeMarcus Riddick in practice. And so I do ultimately think, from just everything I've been reading and listening to, that Auburn's defense will keep them in the game and ultimately stifle Baylor at the end, to where we get a 21-24 or 24-21 game.
I love that. I don't want to, show a bias, but I am rooting a little bit for the Auburn Tigers there because, my friend former coach at FAU, Rock Valentoni, is there as linebackers coach. Shout out to Rock, Coach Rock.
Yeah.
I love him. Before I let you go, I want to know who scores the first touchdown for Auburn.
I gotta go Cam Coleman. I think it's gotta be Cam.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm hoping that
Oh, think you muted yourself on accident. Oh man.
There we go. You got me?
Yeah.
Dude, my mic is so finicky. If I barely bump the cord, it'll immediately cut off. But I was saying Cam Coleman. I think what I'm hoping is Hugh Freeze learned from the last 3 games of last year that when in doubt, get the ball to Cam, and he's going to just ball out. So I think it'll ultimately be Cam that scores the first touchdown.
I love that. I'm a big Cam Coleman fan. I have him in a couple Devy leagues for the fantasy football guys
Same.
out there. Yeah, I love that. Shane, before I let you go, man, let everybody know where they can find you out on your social media pages.
Yeah, you can find me on X, Twitter, Elon Musk Funhouse, at FF Shane B, or my charity tournament account at Polly's Playoff. Facebook is just Shane Patrick Barrett, and Instagram is Shane_Barrett_8. But I really don't post a lot of content there. So if you're into my personal life, then come on to Facebook or Instagram. But if you're looking for content and Auburn football or fantasy football, it's going to be X.
Shane, I appreciate you hopping on the show, man. We'll catch up later.
Thanks for having me
again. Yeah, you
See
take care. Really appreciate Shane coming on. If you guys follow him at X/Twitter at FF Shane B. And Polly's Playoff is a great cause for fantasy football as well. If you guys aren't aware, check that out on X or Twitter as well. It's a great cause. Now I do have 2 people in the backstage. They have been extremely patient. I do appreciate that. We were running a little late. First person I'm going to bring on is Brandon Pockrass, who is our East Coast correspondent. He covers Florida Atlantic football, South Florida Bulls football, and Florida international football. Brandon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Week 1 is finally here. We had week 0 last week. Things are getting rolling this week, and I'm excited.
I love that. And I'm also going to bring in our other South Florida Bulls correspondent, Mackenzie Neglia. Mackenzie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are y'all?
I cannot complain. I apologize for keeping you guys a little bit late. But hey, what else is to talk about but some football in week 1, right? So you guys both of you are going to be on Thursday's matchup as Boise State number 25 takes on the South Florida Bulls. Mackenzie, I want to start with you because you're down right in the area. How's the feeling between not just the community but the program itself as they're entering this big week 1 matchup?
Very, very exciting. All the fans are engaging with the team. They're ready to show out at Raymond James. So it's definitely ready.
Yeah, it was kind of cool seeing I think it was the spring. It was like a spring I think it was the spring game or scrimmage, I think was there, and there was a lot of people there. So I know people are excited. Then it can only be more exciting now. Now you've gotten to talk to, you got to see Coach at the pressers, Byron Brown, starting quarterback at the pressers, and in practice. What are your thoughts on Byram as he enters this year? Because he did have the issues last year where he wasn't able to see the field. Now he's back, presumably 100%. How do you think that's going to go for him?
I think he's going to do very well. He had a very good 2023, and then 2024 was kind of, back and forth, and it ended very suddenly. But he's looked better than ever in practice. He's come back stronger. He's very, very confident. We've heard that from him himself, as well as Coach Golish and the rest of the staff. So I think he's ready to come back and lead this offense.
I love to hear that. Now, Brandon, I want to go to you. You know, Boise State comes into this without Ashton Ginty, you know, without Ahmad Hassanine at the edge. They are losing some very key playmakers who went on to the NFL draft. UCF has a defense that I think is being a little bit underrated right now. How do you think they're going to stack up against this Boise State offense?
So, you know, to make sure you don't get killed in the comments, we're talking about USF, not UCF.
I'm sorry. I'm telling you, man, your pop's dyslexia is just rubbing off on me. So I am so sorry. Please don't attack me, Bulls fans. I meant USF, not the UCF Knights, the USF Bulls. Yes.
So I think when it comes down to it, right, you know, it's really interesting when you talk about the defense, because I think their strength is going to be something that a lot of defenses don't exactly have all the time. You know, the linebacker position, whether it be, you know, your Mac Harris, whether it be, you know, some of the other guys that they have alongside him. I like a lot of their guys in the secondary. It's one of those things where Boise, of course, has the talent. They were a playoff team last year, obviously on the backs of one of the best running back prospects in the past decade, and obviously one of the best running back prospects in the past 5 years. I think the veteran presence of Harris, of a few other guys on that defense, are going to be really helpful to have them start fast, because, you know, there's no preseason for college football. There's no, you know, ramp up period in the sense of, okay, here's the game action where you can face another team and see how everything looks full speed. This is the first game action for every team. You know, some teams have the week 0, some teams have the week 1. USF and Boise State are starting week 1. So I think right off the bat, the defense has a very good advantage when it comes to the veteran presence. And they're going to have that unit ready to roll. And look, even if Boise figures things out halfway through, even if they start to really maybe even move the ball later in the game, if the Bulls start out fast on the defensive side of the ball and are really able to stymie the Boise State offense, whether it be rushing or passing, and in turn, an offense led by a veteran quarterback, even though he's young, he is a veteran quarterback. I think that's a very good way that USF could end up winning this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you guys talk about, you know, that leadership, and I believe Deshaun Rucker is another guy that you guys talk about in the secondary as somebody who could make an impact on this game. Mackenzie, I want to talk about, you know, I asked Brandon about how the defense could stop Boise State's offense. How do you think the USF offense is going to stack against the Boise State Broncos defense?
I think the O-line really needs to kind of step up in that way and protect Byram, make sure he has that time in the pocket and to get out there. I think you have to send the wide receivers kind of in different areas downfield and then both in the middle. But overall, I think they can find, with their route running and also pushing through from the backfield, you have Cartavius Norton and Sam Franklin, both of those guys out there. So I think that they will be able to, like, strategically kind of move through that defense.
I love that you use the word strategically, because I think that's going to play a big part into how USF ends up being successful. And I think you made another great point too about the offensive line. You know, I mean, Brandon, you're with me a lot when we talk about P4 and G5. Now, I know both of these are technically, you know, G5, G6 programs, but do you think that offensively, on the offensive trenches for the Bulls, will they be able to outpower the Boise State defenders? Do you think that the South Florida Bulls have an offensive line where the size for them allows them to be able to not just get a push in the run game, but as Mackenzie just alluded to, protecting Byram Brown, making sure he stays healthy, making sure he's able to get to these second and third reads?
You know, I think that later in the year, we're going to see that power aspect. I don't think that's how USF wants to necessarily win this one. I think they really want to roll out this wide receiver core that it seems like they're very excited about. We obviously know Byram has the cannon. There's a reason why he's gotten some NFL draft buzz in years past with the type of traits that he has, not only as a runner, but as a passer that can absolutely rip the ball down the field. I mean, if you look at the wideouts, right? You got your Keyshawn Singleton, you have your Chaz Nimrod, you have your Medea Rubin, you have even younger guys like Jeremiah Coger and Corey Pettigrew, right? There's a lot of guys that they can put on this field that are not only physically imposing, but have the traits to really make an impact. And I think when we talk about the offensive line, there's a lot of veteran presence and there's a lot of floor here. That ceiling can come down the line, but I think starting off in week 1, week 2, week 3, you are going to rely on that veteran presence to really help the pass game execute. Because let's face it, right? The only way in terms of, and we're talking about pure talent, the way the Bulls are going to be successful in the run game is by having that passing game open up the offense, by having the passing game open up the rushing attack, right? Where Norton and Franklin and Isaac are going to be able to have the success, because that's just how they're built. And that's how in these games, you're going to have to out scheme not necessarily a Boise State, because I think they're very comparable to Boise State, but a Florida, a Miami, you're going to have to out scheme them. And I think you have to start implementing that in week 1 in terms of that pass game. So, bringing it back full circle, I think that's why the offensive line, I'm more so looking at it. And I know you mentioned power. I think that's going to be important in conference play, like American play, 100%. Yeah. But I think in these non-con games, you really have to look at the pass blocking prowess and what that is going to allow USF to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned, it's kind of funny you mentioned the weeks 1, 2, and 3. People who aren't aware, South Florida really, really put themselves on the bullseye with 3, highly ranked football teams in the AP polls. I believe I know they're the only G5 team, G6 team to do that. They might be the only team to do that. I'd have to double check on that. I'm not sure how the P4 stands out. And I know it's something that we've actually, all 3 of us have gone back and forth on. Even on last week's show, we kind of talked about it a little bit. But Mackenzie, I want to hear your opinion. What's the final score in this game, and how does it get done?
So my first thought was that it would be USF 28, Boise State 24. But I don't think that it's going to be a totally high-scoring game. I think it's going to be close, but the spread could definitely be higher than that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. Do you have – okay, so who – let's see here. If we have USF winning, who do you think scores the first touchdown on this? I want to hear – we're going to see if you are a Nostradamus-esque in your preseason prediction.
I'm either going to say it's going to be down the field to Keyshawn, or Byram's going to take it himself.
See, now you all heard it here first. So Mackenzie has told us how it is going to happen. First touchdown of the game for USF, and that is how it's going to play out. I personally love that. Brandon, I want to get your thoughts too. How do you think this game plays out? Who ends up winning this game?
So I think it's going to be a battle, and I think this is going to be a very interesting game where both teams try to get their feet underneath them quick. But I do think I lean USF with the home field, with a very excited fan base, especially with, as we talk about this 3-game slate. I do think they pull it off by a score of, let's say, 24-21.
I like that. Okay, I like that. Those are pretty close, honestly. So Mackenzie, before we get you out of here, so I do apologize because we were running late, so I'm sorry for making you stay a little bit longer. How do you just, Raymond James, big stadium, NFL stadium. How do you think it gets filled in the home, the homecoming, or not the homecoming game, because that happens a couple weeks from now, but the home opener?
I think there's been so much intrigue with this preseason, with this fall camp, of people really want to see like what the Bulls are going to bring this year.
All right.
So I think that is gonna draw in a much bigger audience for them. We're just gonna hope that it doesn't rain because it's been raining every day here. So hopefully.
You can just hear the disappointment in your voice there. That's Florida for you, though, right? Mackenzie, before we let you go, let everyone know where they can find you at.
On X it's my first and last name, which is at Mackenzie Neglia. All my USF stuff is on there.
Yeah, make sure you guys are following Mackenzie, as she is our main correspondent for the USF Bulls. USF, not UCF. Mackenzie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
You too.
And like I said, make sure you guys are following her. She's done a great job in her first year with the League Winners. And let's follow her at Mackenzie Neglia at MackenziNeglia. Now, Brendan, we do have two more games that you are actually, two teams, two different stories. The first, let's go with FAU, Florida Atlantic at Maryland for the Terrapins. What are your thoughts on that game? Because the discourse behind that game, for people who don't know and just aren't in that side of Twitter, first off, I don't blame you. Second off, it's just been insane. So I want to hear your opinions on on this matchup for week 1.
I think the word that I want to use and branch off the conversation from is the word interesting, because this is, and we talked about it last week, this is a very interesting game because it's all about how you categorize things and how a Maryland team stacks up to an FAU team, right? So we got to start with the Maryland side first. Maryland, let's face it, is not going to be a competitor in the Big Ten, at least on paper. We don't know how things play out. Crazier things have happened in college football, but this is a very young roster. This is a team that is still in the midst of a 3-person quarterback battle. They have not named a starter yet. This is a team that is bringing a lot of young talent in, a lot of high upside, 4-star, 5, maybe even some 5-star young talent from the state of Maryland and surrounding areas, and even branching out beyond that. But this is a young team. This is an unproven team, and I think this is a team we could be talking about if they retain a lot of their roster in the next year or 2 years from now. And that's also if they've retained the coaching staff, as one that's like, hey, maybe Maryland could be frisky this year. Maybe they could, compete for a mid to upper tier bowl game, right? That's not this year. There's going to be a lot of kinks they have to work through. FAU is also going through a rebuild, right? FAU is also bringing in a lot of new pieces and a lot of different scheme things and a lot of different things that are very optimistic and could be positive. But we haven't seen it on the field yet. And we haven't really seen a lot of Maryland's on the field yet. And I think where the discourse is coming from is Maryland's side of things. A lot of Maryland fans are looking at it as, yes, we may not be great in the Big Ten, but we have more talent than FAU. And I think from the FAU side of things, and I think both sides have valid points, FAU side of things are looking at it as Zach Kittley has gotten the best out of every offense he's coached. He has led whatever offense you can think of to very great heights. He has been a phenomenal offensive mind. There's a lot of talent on this Owls roster. There's a lot of guys that could be really successful. We think we can push Maryland in a very close game compared to what people think. And once again, I think both sides are coming at it with some valid points. Here's where I fall with it. I do think Maryland wins this game, but I don't think it's going to be as handily as some people think. I also don't think FAU is going to have the ease that a lot of people think they will have in scoring points. I see this as, let's say, a 35-21 game or a 35, maybe 24 game, somewhere within the 10 to 7 point range. I truly think that's where we're at, where Maryland shows that they have the talent level that's above FAU, but FAU also shows that they're going to be very competitive in every game that they play. But I could be wrong. Once again, we haven't seen FAU on the field yet. This is all working off what we've seen from prior stops from a lot of these players. And that's why I'm so excited to see it on Saturday. What does the scheme look like? How does this team mesh right off the bat? How do they look heading into their home opener, right? We're finally going to get answers to these questions that we've been waiting for months.
Yeah, because it's funny. For people who aren't aware, practice, they haven't really given reporters live looks on live reps for practice. So anybody saying anything definitive other than, whatever has been released for the depth chart from the team itself is all speculation. With that said, we have, me and Brandon have seen, Caden Velkamp. We have seen Easton Messer. We've seen the guys from FAU live last year, and we've seen Kitley's offense being ran while he was at Tech. So we can make, estimated guesses. We can create a hypothesis of how it's going to go, but nothing is definitive. What we do know, though, is that the discourse around the game has been insane for honestly a game that's kind of, it's like for most people, most college football fans are like Florida Atlantic, Maryland, who cares? The fan bases care, I'll tell you that much. And the spread for that game has gone down, and it keeps lowering in Florida Atlantic's favor.
Where is that right now?
I think it's at 13 or 14. So it was back up, and then it went back down again. So I think it might be around that 2 touchdown range where, honestly, I might take FAU if I was a betting man. It doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt at all. But there is another matchup that you're actually going to be present for as well, and that's actually Florida International, the FIU Panthers. They're going to face Bethune-Cookman. FIU has never beaten them, which I was very surprised when I saw that statistic. Do you think that luck changes for them this year?
From what I've seen, I think it should. I really do think it should. Obviously, once again, you got to see it on the field. You got to see it play out. Yeah. But I do think it should. And I feel very confident in what I've seen, and that I think the Panthers are going to start off hot in the first game under Willie Simmons, under the lights at their home stadium. I do think they're going to pull out the win. Now, I'm very interested to see how a lot of different things look, but I do think we're going to see very, very good stuff from this team. Yeah,
and that's kind of what – I mean, expectations are just high in FIU.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
305. They've sold out their suites already, which is quicker than a lot of teams. I think it was before actually Florida Atlantic sold out theirs, for whatever that's worth. The fan base seems to be buying in. Do you think that translates to game day? Do you think that Simmons, the culture he's trying to instill in that program, do you think that translates to butts in seats on game day?
I think it'll partially, but look, at the end of the day, every team, every program attacks it differently. The best thing to get fans in the seats is winning football games. The best thing to get fans in the stands is success on the field and sustained success on the field. We talk about a lot of different programs on the show. The reason USF has had that uptick in care about the program and, that fan base becoming even larger is because they've been starting to have that success, right? People are getting excited about where this thing could lead. FAU, a lot of the excitement surrounding Kitley is because of the idea of what that success could mean. And I would be, if I was a betting man, which, I sometimes am, I'd bet that Flagler Credit Union Stadium has a lot more people in it if FAU starts winning games this year. And the same goes for FIU, right? If Willie Simmons' Panthers come out and hit the ground running, like I really think they can, you're going to have more people in the stands for that Shula Bowl game. There's going to be that buzz in the air, that excitement. And man, if they play Penn State closer than people think, that's that next step, right? Yeah. So everything that happens in the offseason is one thing. We're done with that. It's showtime. What does it look like on the field? How does the players, the talent look that has been, cultivated and accumulated over the past 2 months with 2 transfer portal windows in between? Well, technically 3, but really 2. If that translates to immediate success, that's going to get even more people in the stands.
And that's actually kind of a good segue because you did say that, Florida Atlantic was going to win that matchup. What are some key players for you in that game? For those who don't know, we do release game preview articles and everything as well. But just in case you don't have the time to read it, that's why we're going to break some stuff down here as well. And that's why we have been doing so. So Brandon, who do you see making an impact for the Panthers on offense and defense?
So, obviously I could do the layup and say Keelan Jenkins, but I talked about him a ton. You probably know where I fall with him already. I will say wide receiver Alex Perry is probably my player to watch on the offensive side of the ball. And there's a second one that I really want to touch on in a little bit. But I think for me on the offensive side of the ball, Perry is a Hawaii transfer. He has the size to play the X wide out. He's whatever size he's listed at, that he's legitimately that size, right? Like he's your prototypical X receiver mold. But he has the ability to do so much more. He has the ability to run a lot of different things that this offense wants him to do, whether it's down the field, middle of the field, etc. I had a chance to talk to him twice, once in the spring, once in fall camp. And, the one thing he emphasized in fall camp or in the spring and brought up in fall camp, he wants to be an all-around wideout. He wants to be someone that is able to do everything that an offense asks for him. And truly, I've seen that progression. He arrives as a transfer in the spring, and then in training camp, he looks like the best wideout on the field most of the time. He's making play after play after play, and sometimes even mossing defenders. So this is a guy I'm really excited about. And if it's not him, a position that I'm overall watching is the running back position. And, KJ Owens and Anthony Carey, two awesome players. Keep an eye on Devontae Lyons. If you follow my tweets, my posts from these practices over the course of the spring and summer / fall, however you want to classify it, Lyons has been one of the best offensive players on the field whenever he touches the ball. He's extremely dynamic. He's dynamite. I really think he could be a big play machine for them if that's how they use him. And if he gets a lot of touches, I think he can be one of the better backs in the overall Conference USA. So that's that for the offensive side of the ball.
I love that, man, because this is like, I don't think a lot of people realize the FIU offense wasn't nearly as, even last year, they weren't nearly as bad as people want to perceive it. Like that Shula Bowl game is actually a good example of how close it could have been, because I know Florida Atlantic ended up winning that game, but, there was a bad fumble at the goal line that happened. They ended up losing that. If they don't lose that, they score. That was inside the 5-yard line. And then there was a 4th down play where, just the edge defender didn't set the edge. And that ended up being a 4th down run on 4th and 1, 50-yard touchdown for, I think it was Jamari Sands, maybe. It might have been, oh man.
No, I think it was Zuberi Mobley.
It was Zuberi Mobley. Yes, it was. I apologize, Zuberi. So yes, and if that doesn't happen, that game becomes so different that I don't think Florida Atlantic fans would be as, I guess I'll use the word cocky as they are against FIU.
I say confident. I'd use the word confident.
Yeah, I would. That's a good word. Yeah, because I do think it's going to be a lot closer of a game, and we have talked about there could be a potential upset there. But on the defensive side of the ball for FIU, and in this week's matchup against Bethune-Cookman, what players are you looking at to really just step up?
So this ties into the press conference from today with head coach Willie Simmons, because Josiah McGrew, a freshman for the Panthers, is one of the starters for the team at the safety position. And that really piqued my interest because he's been one of the best players on the field all fall camp. I've been really impressed by his coverage ability, his ability to fly downhill, make plays, etc. Right. I want to see what it looks like on the field, because if they truly have a lockdown, just ball hawking safety that can do a little bit of everything, I don't think people realize what that does for a defense and what that does for a team. Yeah. Because FIU, if I were to say what the strongest position on the overall roster is, the first or second one that's coming to mind are the overall defensive backs. That's one of that whether it's corner, whether it's safety, even nickel, I really think this is one of the best overall units on the team. And the fact that a freshman is getting on the field for them already, that is extremely impressive, and I'm very excited to see what he does.
Yeah, I love that. We talked about that off camera a little bit. Just having a true freshman taking a step in a leadership role on the defense, especially in the secondary, is really, it signifies a lot. I mean, we saw it last year too. I don't want to keep bringing up FAU while we're talking about FIU, but we saw it last year with FAU and CJ Hurd, and now he stepped up. He actually ended up going to Vanderbilt, if I'm not mistaken, transferring out. So he's with a power conference program. Hopefully that doesn't happen. And FIU is able to retain their guys and obviously build that program under Willie Simmons, which I think they'll do. But it's good to see somebody that young stepping up in a major way. Now you did have FIU coming out on top. I just want to hear your final prediction on the game.
Yeah, and that's also something to keep an eye on. I'll tie this into my overall, prediction for the game. Coach Willie Simmons has emphasized multiple times now that in this new era of college football, you have to have your younger players ready to play. And I think that rings true, especially for programs that aren't at the P4 level. You're not going to always consistently have those veterans available to you because a lot of them may choose to transfer up. And you know what? Because that's a good thing for them. That's a good thing to, have that opportunity. But it's the reality for a lot of programs like that. I think you're going to see a lot of that young talent on display, whether it's late in the game, whether it's early in the game. I do think you're going to see what this offense can do, not only to an opponent like Bethune-Cookman, but also opponents in Conference USA and potentially FAU in the Shula Bowl, right? I think it's going to be a great foundation setter for FIU. Is it going to be perfect? No, of course not. It's the first game under a new coach with a lot of new staff and a much different roster. There's going to be bumps. There's going to be some miscues, but I think overall you're going to really see a team that is heading in the right direction and a team that's going to win.
Yeah, and that's the thing I don't want people to overlook and forget is that, yes, we are bullish on the prospects of a lot of the teams you cover, not just FIU, but a lot of the teams that we cover and follow. And that's not because, we're being homers. It's because, we see coaches who have a vision in place and they're trying to set that culture. And that takes time. A lot of stuff doesn't happen in year one. So if it doesn't happen year one in FIU and Willie Simmons, it's not hit the panic button. It's just more of let's see what happens going forward. Because as you alluded to, there's going to be those aches and pains throughout the season. And the hope is that the Panthers can overcome that or start out fast, at least keep up with Penn State in week 2, and then just try to hold their own. And I think if they're able to hold their own through the rest of the season, there's going to be a lot of opportunities where those 50-50 games down in the fourth quarter, they can end up potentially pulling away. So I'm very excited to see that. But Brandon, before I let you go, because I know we're running late and I do apologize, let everybody know where they can find you out on your social media.
As always, you can find me on Twitter at BPOC24, Blue Sky at Brandon-Pockris at BSky Social, and on Instagram at BPOC24. Appreciate coming on as always. And we are finally here. College football season is here.
It's getting crazy, man. I appreciate you coming on the show, Brandon. We'll catch up later.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye. That was Brandon Pockris. He is our East Coast correspondent for the League Winners, mainly covering FIU, FAU, and USF football. Now, I'm also going to actually be at 3 games this week, believe it or not. Thursday, I am traveling to Delaware to watch the Delaware Blue Hens take on the Delaware State Hornets. Delaware State is actually having Deshaun Jackson, former Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver, as his first-time head coach. He has a first-time quarterback from Sacramento State. I believe it's Caden Bennett. I want to make sure I pronounce his name correctly before I end up botching that. But Delaware, there is something interesting that did come out of Delaware's press conference yesterday, and that is that Zach Marker, who was originally the starting quarterback going into the spring camp, he is not in the starter quarterback role anymore. It is now a potentially 3-player race in position battle where it's kind of, you don't know who's going to win it. Now, in the spring, I would have been fairly confident that Zach Marker would have been the starting quarterback because that's the reps he was taking in that practice. He looked one of the best of that practice. He made a really good throw in coverage, looking away his zone and hitting a receiver for a touchdown in the spring game. It was pretty impressive. So I'm a little surprised that he isn't named as the de facto starter in week 1. What that does for, receiving options like Jake Thaw, who's the veteran receiver there and looking to be the guy, remains to be seen. And Joe Silver is the running back for Delaware Blue Hens. He's going to be a factor in this as well. And actually, I was right. It was Caden Bennett, the former Sacramento State quarterback, who actually, I think he won an FCS game for Sacramento State. He is now in at Delaware State as the starting quarterback. He transferred in there late after Delaware State lost their quarterback to the transfer portal in July, which is just insane to think about how you can try to do that. So Delaware, I think, has an advantage on that end because they have a quarterback who's not necessarily used to the system. It is Deshaun Jackson's first game as the head coach. And I do think that at home, the Blue Hens are going to win in this matchup. And then on Friday, I'm actually traveling to West Point to watch the Army Black Knights take on Tarleton State. Kind of a gimme layup game for Army, to be honest, but that's what I want to see out of them in week 1 because they lost their starting quarterback from last year. But the underrated aspect of that too is they actually lost their starting running back, Kanye Udoh. He's now at Arizona State. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that option offense is ran with a lot of new pieces there. And I think Tarleton State is a great place for them to really experiment and see who has it, because just because somebody's named a starter in week 1, especially when there's battles in place, doesn't necessarily mean that these people are going to be the starters throughout the season, let alone at the end of game 1. A lot can change. It is college football where a lot of things are different and change in the blink of an eye because, let's face it, careers are on the line and time is of the essence. It's not like the NFL where you kind of have, unlimited years, so to speak, especially with players. I know the time's a little short. I know this is a kind of maybe a bad comparison, but college football, you like once you're done with that eligibility, you're done. In the professional leagues, if you kind of always have eligibility there is kind of my main point. And if NFL doesn't work out, you can go to the UFL, the CFL. There's other options. In college football, it's not necessarily that cut and dry. So I'm curious to see how that plays out for Army, and especially a team that it's very hard for the academy schools to get guys in through transfers. So I'm curious to see how that entire offense looks. And then we talked about FAU Maryland. I'm actually going to be to that game as well live. So make sure you guys are paying attention to that. But before we go, we do have some other correspondents who have sent in stuff for us. The first one is going to be from Jacob Murray. Jacob is our Pittsburgh correspondent. And they open up the schedule against the Duquesne Dukes. I hope I'm not pronouncing that name wrong, but they're entering on somewhat of a rebuilt year after losing quarterback Darius Parantes. They return key players and wide receiver Joey Isabella. He's actually the brother of former Cardinals receiver Andy Isabella, for those who don't know. Obviously, Pitt is headlined by the 3 huge returning stars: Kyle Lewis, Desmond Reed, and Eli Holstein. Lewis, part of the Sharks linebacking group. He is the leader there. Desmond Reed, former FCS running back, put up 1,000 yards, all-purpose guy last year. Looks great. Eli Holstein, who was doing great before his concussion last year. We touched upon that last week. The Duke's a good football team. Unfortunately, they're just going to be outclassed, and he has Pitt winning this game in a blowout, which that's not surprising. That is what Pitt should be doing to teams of this nature. Now, we also have another one from our Michigan correspondent, Siobhan Amin. And Siobhan says, to open their schedule, they are hosting, for those who don't know, they are hosting New Mexico. It's a nighttime game on Saturday. Michigan gets their chance for the offense and defense to get in rhythm against a lesser G5 opponent. Head coach Ron Moore announced on Monday that Bryce Underwood is going to be the starting quarterback. For those who weren't aware, all eyes are going to be on his performance in his first career college football game, 2025 week 1. On offense, Siobhan has Michigan looking to run the game, going early with the tandem of Justice Haynes, who's taking over, and Jordan Marshall, kind of offensive line that returns 3 starters. They also have transfer Brady Norton, who has starting experience as well. Wide receiver Donovan McCulley is cemented as the team's wide receiver 1, with Samaj Morgan, Shannon Goodwin, and Fred Moore filling out the rest of the unit. Michigan likely will test their receivers early to see what they're capable of. Obviously, they're going to be a run-heavy team, as they always are, but he expects them in this type of matchup against a G5, G6, however you want to call it, opponent, for the offense to get some run. Defensively, the Wolverines have one of the deepest lines in the country. That's no surprise. It's headlined by edge rushers Derek Moore and TJ Guy. Defensive tackles Rayshon Benny and Trey Williams as well. Rayshon Benny, obviously a big part there in that interior. The secondary also features a strong unit. They have Rod Moore returning from a torn ACL, and Jair Hill and Zeke Berry at cornerback. Obviously, for a lot of Michigan fans, they believe this is a tune-up game before the Week 2 matchup, which will be in Norman versus the Oklahoma Sooners. Even if Michigan doesn't get off to a hot start offensively, their defense should dominate throughout the game. His prediction is a blowout of 38-3 for the Michigan Wolverines. Now, there are a couple other games on the schedule that are a little bit interesting. Bill Belichick gets his debut as a coach on his own Monday Night Football matchup. He faces TCU, but the Tar Heels will be at home. That is an 8:00 Eastern time game at night. I'm very curious to see how the Tar Heels play in that game. We also have Utah at UCLA playing in the Rose Bowl Stadium. That's two former Pac-12 teams getting their chance. Nico Imaleva, I'm probably botched that last name. I apologize, but he's going to be the starting quarterback there, and it's very interesting to see how that game specifically goes, because Utah is not a bad team, but UCLA really has to showcase more in year 2 of Deshaun Foster's head coaching tenure. It can't be another bad start. I mean, you're in Los Angeles, you're in a giant hub. You want that program to do well, and it's a program historically that has struggled in recent years. So getting UCLA back to a power program would be great. And Utah, I think, is a really good test at seeing that. We have Hawaii at Arizona this time, so it'll be interesting to see if Hawaii can take down another decent sized program. That is a very curious one to me. We have UAPB at Texas Tech, a blowout for Texas Tech. And I did want to mention one of the more laughable games on the schedule with Long Island University at 15, Florida Gators. I mean, I don't hate teams for, giving some of the smaller programs shine. But man, some of these games are just so one-sided that it's hard to take them seriously. But before we get out of here, I just want to make sure everybody, if you're watching this, please like the channel, subscribe to the page, like the video, share it to your friends. Every Tuesday, it's College Football Now. We are bringing beat reporters who are live on the scene, on location, to this show to make sure they are talking to you about what you need to know that you may not hear otherwise. We also have another, a litany of other great correspondents within the league winners. And on occasion, we'll reach out to people like, our friend Dan Tortora, who was on the show talking Syracuse in South Carolina football. We will have guests like that as well. That is every Tuesday night. We'll be bringing that to you from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you're following the account on the League Winners at the League Winners CF on Twitter, X at the League Winners, exactly how it sounds, on Instagram and on YouTube. Make sure you guys are following us for player interviews, coach interviews, breakdowns, articles at theleaguewinners.com. So make sure that you guys are doing that. And we do appreciate everybody checking in, watching, and just overall enjoying the show. We hope to continue bringing excellent content your way. And this is Thomas Christopher, owner of the League Winners. Follow me at Tommy CFB on Twitter. And that's all from me. And I appreciate you guys. Until next time.